I want to see if you all can hear me. Can you hear me without the microphone? Everyone? Okay, good. All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Ooh, they were pretty good. I could hear them. Should we see if they can go louder?
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can get louder. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, they're good. They're ready.
Yeah.
So I'm Sam Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers for New York State, but I'm here in a much more important role today. I'm also mom. And do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Tyler Fletcher, Sam's lovely son. And we always call each other Krabby Patty, so just keep it short.
Yes, because Tyler is a Krabby Patty. Would you like to introduce your family to everyone?
As you know, my dad is right there in the corner, Jeff Fletcher, Sam's husband.
Our wife.
Yeah. Then my sister Hallie Fletcher graduated with valedictorian. Me, my brother Seth, and that's pretty much our family, and his girlfriend.
Yes, and his girlfriend who's not pictured here. So you will learn more about us over the next 45 minutes. By the way, I have to keep an eye on that because we usually do a 3-hour training, so we're getting it down today. Okay, so we're going to start by introducing you thoroughly to Tyler. So Tyler, you identify as kind, loving, and smart. What do you mean by that?
So kind, loving, smart, that's my personality, and it's a big piece of it. So I like being kind because that's how I would want to be treated as a patient or as a person. And loving and smart, loving, I care about people how I want to care for them and be treated as well back. So that's a part of my wellness plan because being cared for and helping caring for others is very important to me, and I found great love for that. And smart, I am very smart. I think like a autistic person. I think outside the box, but I like to use that. I like to say that because a lot of people think disability is like, oh, he has something wrong with him, he can't do this or can't do that. I think being smart is a great way to say that person can think out of the box some way some other people may not be able to do. So, yeah.
And you're very humble too, right?
I don't know about that.
You also say that you like music, you're an entertainer, you're an activist, and you're well-rounded. What does that mean?
Meaning I like to step my foot in the water before I try new things. So I am very, as you know, we'll get into this later, but I am very picky on doing certain things. But with that, I like to do things that I'm enjoying and kind of like keep me stable and keep my day busy because I'm a person that does not do good with a free schedule or like stuff like that.
You say that you're flexible, driven, teachable, and motivated. Tell everyone about that. What's that mean? So,
as you know, I am flexible when it comes down to it. Like I said, me and my dad are very autistic. As you know, he also has autism, and we butt heads a lot. But you know that happens. But with flexible meaning, I like to kind of cooperate with people and try to find a middle line to the situation, and maybe like be kind of a easier way of like explaining how I want the thing to go. And driven means I like to basically be stuck on one thing before I get it done and go on to the next thing. And teachable meaning I love to learn new things from people that I really admire. So.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about this one later, but do you want to just briefly talk about bipolar, autism, and Tourette syndrome?
Yeah, okay, so bipolar, I am born with bipolar and autism, so as you can tell, I have a hard time regulating certain things and try to explain my feelings and emotions the way a normal person would. So
normal. What is normal?
What is normal, right?
I don't know what that means. I'm going to have you move here because this light's in your face.
Okay.
And then you can see everyone.
Okay.
All right? Okay. Adopted. Talk about that. You're adopted. And I know that's shocking to everyone.
Yeah, we're the same color, right? We're all the same color. We're all the same color. So adopted. I am my mom's son, and I will always be my mom's son because that's the person I woke up to, and that's the person I care about. Like she's my whole world. So, adopted meaning that we think as a tribe and we think as a family that's not like, oh, we need to think upwards, like a hierarchy, basically. But we think as a tribe that the whole tribe has a say in what the person wants to basically discuss.
How old were you when you came to live with us? He never gets this right.
7 weeks.
10 days. 10 days.
I get it close.
Good try. Okay, and you're black male, 22, and you live in black culture and native culture. Do you want to talk a little about that?
So, black male, I am black, so you get some experiences that you probably wouldn't want to basically experience as a black man or a black woman would experience, what a white woman or a black man would experience. But to be able to kind of work through that culture and basically try to navigate your life through a black person's eyes, it's very, very difficult, but also very, very interesting and beautiful at the same time because you get to experience the culture, not be the culture. So.
And native culture comes from, I am Cherokee, and I know you all were like, what tribe does she belong to? And she walked in the room. But I am a member of the Cherokee Nation, the Bird Clan. I've lived in native culture my whole life, and our family's been living in native culture. And I have a question for you, Tyler. Out of all of these things, which one would you change?
Okay, so I came up with a kind of funny explanation for this because I am autistic, and taking one of these things is like taking a puzzle out, and as you know, autism, the sign of autism is a puzzle sign. So taking a piece of this out would wreck everything apart of the whole personality that represents me. And I think I would never change anything because it wouldn't be me at the end of the day. So.
And this is native culture. So in native culture, we see people very holistically, like this isn't the most important part about Tyler, this isn't the most important part about Tyler, all of these things are Tyler, and he's a holistic person, and that's who we see him as. Also in my culture, mental health challenges, they don't really have a stigma. His brain works differently. My husband's brain works differently, and that is really cool. Like, it's really, are there challenges with it? Yeah, you'll hear some of those. But I wouldn't change any of those challenges because of being around people who do think so differently and so uniquely that there's just no stigma in it. And I'll tell you a couple things about native culture. First of all, time. It's just really a suggestion, so that's why I'm big on time. I've got to watch it because in our culture, we'd all sit around until we solved this. Like however long it took, we'd all be here and we would just solve it. That time wouldn't even be an issue, so I have to watch that one. Tyler was talking about hierarchy. We don't see hierarchy like American culture. So I'm the executive director at NASW. Tyler works at a gas station. Those two jobs are exactly the same in our house because the most important thing about us is that we use our gifts to serve our community. And as long as we're doing that, then we are being true to ourselves, and we're a collective culture. So Tyler's talking about tribe. Everything's about the well-being of the tribe. Not I don't matter, he doesn't matter, Jeff doesn't matter. Our tribe matters.
Mom recently said something to me, we each have our role and we have to accept that, and basically that's what we bring to the table, and what we bring to the table helps the tribe out as a whole. So.
Yes, how we serve people. Very good. All right, so this is me with my native hair. Now, I am not ready to go gray, so, so now I have blonde hair, but that's my real hair. Some people recognize me, some people don't. Tyler, you want to introduce Sharika?
So this is my other mom, which I both call them my mom, because taking away that right from them, it wouldn't be anyways as acceptable. But she's my mom, that's my mom, and I got to meet her recently this year. And then this is my dad, Jeff Fletcher, as you know, and then the other way, this is my brother Seth. So
Seth and Tyler's cute little babies. All right, first memories of Tourette syndrome, autism, and mania. Okay, so it's important that you know that we're from Oklahoma, Indian Territory, kind of makes sense, right? That's where all of our kids were adopted, and Tyler lived there till he was 4. The services in Oklahoma, what services are in Oklahoma? It's just a different world. One of the most racist places that I've ever, had the unfortunate experience of living in for 30 years. So especially with a black child, trying to get services is pretty much just impossible. We knew Tyler was considered a special needs adoption. They said there's most likely going to be some issues. We're like, yeah, whatever, okay. So, but we suspected, because we had to do our own research after he was born, we suspected he had autism from a young age. That was the last diagnosis he got, and he didn't get it till 14. So I'll tell you a little about that. So the first thing he was diagnosed with was Tourette syndrome. Tyler went to kindergarten, like all kids do, and
also homeschooled.
Well, that's what I'm getting ready to get to. So he goes to kindergarten, and they end up testing him toward the end of the year. The psychologist did a test, and I'm going to use the terminology they told me. They diagnosed him with mental retardation, and they told me that he would never learn to read, he would never learn math, and he would not be able to function in society. Now, I knew there were some things going on, but I knew that wasn't it, because I knew that he was incredibly smart, because I'd been around him his whole life. So I was like, oh, if you're not going to teach him, I will. So I took him out, and we homeschooled. When I was teaching him to read, one of the things that kept happening is he'd roll his eyes in his head and shake his head over his shoulder.
It's not like a pig.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what started, was the rolling the head and shaking, and it was all the time. So getting through a sentence took a really long time. So again, I would like to say that our doctors, when we first came to New York, that we had a much different situation than Oklahoma, but that's not true. We did not. The racism was so profound that anytime I took him to the doctor, I was told that his behavior was cultural. So I would say, so you're telling me because he's black that he's having a temper tantrum for 8 hours. Now, I've been around kids, and I know that's not it.
She also
so
nandied kids.
I could not get help for him. So I did my own research, and I'm like, okay, so what is this? What am I looking at? And out of my research, I know you're not supposed to do that, but when you can't get answers from the medical providers, you do whatever you've got to do for your kid. So I was like, he either has Tourette syndrome or he's having seizures, like multiple seizures all the time. So I did get a referral to a neurologist, because I can be quite insistent, and the neurologist diagnosed him with Tourette syndrome. So that was the first thing he was diagnosed with. And I'm going to actually go to the next screen. There were some issues around that, like he would snore, it was, like if someone touched him, he had to touch them back, like the head shaking, all of that. Like that was really kind of where it started. Then between 7 and 9, there were just, it's hard to explain. There were just behavioral things that were like, okay. And again, we could not get help. We could not get help. When I would go to the doctor, it was so insane what they would say to me and how they would treat him. So the behaviors were increasing. So we got him a social worker. The social worker was actually very good.
He was there when my meltdowns happened as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So at 9, he started to, flight or fight. That started to kick in, fight or flight. And he started running, he would run. And we live on a very busy street, and it was like in the winter, he's 9, actually 8 years old, and he runs out into traffic during a blizzard. And I have to chase him down the street. He was fast. Like I had to drag him home by his snow pants. he was at work, so I had to call him. I'm like, get home right now, because like he's got to go to the hospital. Like he's not safe right now. So his first hospitalization happened then. No one would take him around here because he was so young. So he actually ended up in Plattsburgh at the hospital. That was the first time he went on medication. Because I always said with medication, I want to know what you're medicating. Like, I am not anti-medication, believe me, but you got to tell me what you're medicating and what our purpose is with this.
First time in my life too.
So at that point, that's when he was put on medication, and it was phenomenal. Like for a whole year, like it was like great. He was completely stable. He was doing great. And then the other intervention from the hospital was he has to go to school and be in a contained classroom. And actually that was great. That first experience in the school was really good. He just happened to be put in a class with 5 phenomenal teachers who were so good with him. So we go through a few years then of like, you know, the first medication wearing off, they switch and he does really well. Then he hits puberty at 12. As you can see, he's big. And when he hit puberty, he was growing at such a rate, his body could not metabolize the medication. He was essentially manic for 2 years. And that's when he got the bipolar diagnoses. He has bipolar with mainly mania and psychotic features. So at this point, he was hospitalized 14 times in a 2-year period. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when we get into like recommendations and like what we're talking about. But this period in our life was definitely the darkest period in our life because Tyler's the oldest. So his brother is 7 months younger than him, and then his sister is 3 years younger than him. And so this is one of the conversations that I was having with Mary Jean, like before here, she's like, define crisis. Crisis in our world is life-threatening. Either he's in danger or he's endangering someone else. Now this is when Tyler's stable, he is the gentlest person that you have ever met in your life. I think you all can see, he loves me like so much.
I can't go anywhere without it.
Like he would never ever harm me. But when Tyler's manic, he's delusional and he can be dangerous to himself and he's been dangerous to me before. So it's a lot, right? Like with his sister and his brother, and his sister was a target for a while. So like, I don't want anyone like saying, oh my God, this is a model family, because we struggled. I mean, it was incredibly difficult for the 2 years that we went through this. And
we grew up with like very little money too.
Oh yeah, we've lived in poverty. I've lived in poverty my whole life until 2017. And we did that by choice because one of us had to be home. And I was home for 14 years, and then we switched places, and now his dad is home full time because it's his life. And we all made the sacrifices to make sure that he was safe and that his siblings were safe. Our life changed during his last hospitalization in 2014. We had a doctor he always goes to Ellis. We actually loved Ellis. They were phenomenal. He had a phenomenal psychiatrist there who was so good to us. But they had a visiting doctor, Dr. Guy from Johns Hopkins. Dr. Guy is an MD psychiatrist and a PhD neuroscientist. And he was like, as soon as he went in, he said, oh, he is really complex and fascinating. I'm going to keep him for 10 days. I really want to study what's going on. And we're like, yes. Also, Dr. Guy's a black man. So life-changing, right? So at the end of the 10 days, I go up, I meet with Dr. Guy, changed our lives, sat down, drew a picture of the brain. He was showing me when Tyler has an episode, a manic episode, here's what's actually happening in his brain. And he's like, these are the neurons that are impacted, and it literally does brain damage. He's like, he diagnosed him with autism. 14 years to get a diagnosis of autism. 14 years. He said autism and bipolar are two sides of the same coin, and we're going to treat the autism. Because he said, if you can get the autism and get him to where you reduce that anxiety, then the bipolar will get under control too. And he said the medications are the same. We're not even changing the medications because those are fine. And he said everything is de-escalation. everything. When he starts to escalate, you de-escalate. So this is quite a commitment. He has 2 younger siblings. You know, at the time, they were what, like 13 and 11 or something? Yeah. And so having to train them, I understand your brother is being really nasty, and I understand that your brother's acting in a way, but our job is to de-escalate. That was a commitment by all of us to learn those techniques. And it was very much like, we will address the behaviors when he is stable.
And when he's well again. And
when he's well. We will address all of that. But we have to get him de-escalated to protect his brain. And we all did it. We're a tribe. Nothing's about me. Nothing's about him. It's about us and the well-being of the tribe. So that's what we did. It was a commitment. Now, on top of what we're talking about, Tyler also has a lot of physical issues. I always love doctors when we go see them. They're like, oh, wow, this is complex. I'm like, okay, you're good. We're going to stay with you because you understand what you're seeing, and you understand it's going to take time to tease things out. So he can't regulate his body temperature, which can be really dangerous because, oh my God, this child shows up at my house on a 90-degree day with a leather bomber jacket and snow boots. And I'm like, no, you cannot wear that. It's dangerous. You have to wear weather-appropriate clothing. He has decreased sensory awareness, so he can't feel certain things. So, for example, he cut himself on his hand all the way to the bone with a butter knife because he couldn't tell he was cutting himself. He doesn't brace himself when he falls.
Split my chin open.
Yeah, we've had the split open to the bone. We've had concussions. He's our injury kid. He takes all the injuries.
Torn Achilles.
Yeah, he has undiagnosed joint problems that look like arthritis, so his joints swell ever since he's a little kid. He gets really sore. He has Raynaud's syndrome, which I do too, so I always say it's genetic. It's where you're...
It's our connection.
Yeah, it's our connection. It's where your feet and hands can't really regulate your body temperature. Severe eczema as a child. In some of his baby pictures, you may have seen his red face. That was the severe eczema. Chemical imbalance all through his body. He has decreased motor control. We just talked about asthma. He's allergic to everything, and he develops new allergies all the time. That's always fun. And he has a genetic disease called PPK, and show him your hands. So he can't really straighten his fingers, and he has extra skin on his hands and his feet. He also has clown feet that are size 18.
And Mom also takes you to the pedicure, and you have to scrape it all off.
So, we do have to get pedicures so we can take care of that. So, and I always have to pay double for those extra long feet and all the extra skin. Okay, so lived experience. We cannot talk about this without talking about race, which I've been talking about. So what happens when Tyler's in crisis? We live in Schenectady. Tyler's had a few suicide attempts. They always involve traffic, trying to jump in front of traffic or jump out of a car. So we cannot take him to the hospital if he's in crisis because it's dangerous. We also can't call an ambulance to transport him. The only option we have is to call the police. And I have never had fear that Tyler has autism and bipolar. I have a knot in my stomach all the time and can't sleep because Tyler's black, because it's life-threatening every time.
And I get a certain level of protection because some cops realize who my mom and dad are, and they treat me with a certain level of the respect and safety that a normal black kid, if he was in the same position as me and had black parents, would not receive that. So.
But we're also not always with him. And when we have to call, I always start with, my son is black, he's very large, he has a mental condition, and he needs to be in the hospital. Please don't bring weapons. That my children, his siblings are trained to say that. My brother's black, he's very large, he has a mental condition, he needs to be in the hospital, because we speak the unspoken part out loud. I do that knowing that makes no difference, but to me, I feel like I have to do everything in my power. So the police have pulled guns on Tyler twice. He was 9 the first time. The second time wasn't even related to a call. They were looking for a black man in our neighborhood and profiled him while he was standing in our window.
Put their hand on their gun.
Which is extremely traumatizing, you know, in front of his siblings and to him and to all of us. We talked about the hospital. The medical, I have to talk about his medical conditions are so tightly tied to his mental health. His last hospitalization was actually this year. He had not been hospitalized since 2014 because honestly, I was petrified to, even when he would get manic, I was like, I can't call the police. I can't call the police.
And this one was bad.
So this one, he had been relatively stable since 2014, and he fell and injured his Achilles tendon, and it immediately threw him into mania, and he was manic for 4 months. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in recommendations because that's a problem. Everyone knew he wasn't stable, and there was nothing we could do until they said it escalated. Escalating for him is his life. So that's a problem. That's a problem with our state. Whoops. Sorry about that. I did want to touch on what do we do after an episode, because, you know, something happens, like what do you do with that? So his siblings have been involved. They've seen him go out. Like, they've seen the police in our house. They've seen the police draw guns on him. They've seen him taken away. They've seen him, you know, sometimes he's slobbering. He's like growling like a dog. So every time my husband would go to the hospital to get him checked in, and I would stay and process with his siblings so that they would be free to say whatever they needed to say and get their feelings out and talk about it. His brother is also Native, and in our culture, the first thing he'd say is, "When's Tyler coming home?" I'm like, "Your brother is growling like a dog and threatening to hurt himself. He needs to be in the hospital." He's like, "Yeah, but when's he coming home?" Oh my God. So that's the processing. Now with Tyler, you can't process till he's stable. But the key with Tyler was to separate his actions when he's not stable with himself, because one of the things I would always say is, would I get upset with someone who was diabetic and did something if they were like hypoglycemic?
Or had cancer.
Yeah, if someone had cancer and they were acting off because of medication, would I be upset with them? So why would it be any different when you got to externalize that, right? Like that.
Kind of get out of the mindset of like, this person's sick and we can't do anything to help this person right now. So
yeah, and it's very, he would feel guilty about some of the things that would happen if he wasn't stable. And
it would throw me back into a manic depression.
Right, which could be cyclical, right? Like if you're dealing with guilt and then you're feeling this way, it could throw you right back into mania. So we got to separate that. That sometimes when we're in a crisis, we do things we don't do when we're not in a crisis. And that is not who you are as a person. No. That's just a behavior. It's a symptom of a medical condition. So that is extremely important. And we use humor as probably our best coping strategy as a fun, like as a family. I mean, we'll literally be like, "Hey, remember when you threw that fan at me? That was," you know,
we want to like try to regulate and to express, like, we come together as a group, as a tribe, and we try to sit down and find the source of the problem as a tribe. And whoever is the main, like, in the position of that, we go and talk to the group and we discuss it as a whole. So
yes, and it's very important. We're talking about Tyler, but Tyler's a part of this tribe, so he's a support person for his brother, his sister, for his dad, for me as well. He's not just the person that we're always supporting. He's also a support person for all of us. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. I'm doing good. Okay. Okay, so just some more pictures that Tyler chose. So, I mean, look how cute. I mean, look at this baby Tyler.
Everybody says I'm the cutest baby ever. I get that compliment.
So you can kind of see the eczema here a little bit.
I lost some of my hair also because it was so bad.
Yeah, he didn't have hair on the back of his head. All right, so this is our reunion in DC with Tyler's birth family. This is his other mom, Sharika, and his brother and his sister, and all of our other family, which is, we're talking about Tyler's wellness plan now. I think his biggest part of his wellness plan is us, his family, his support people. And that includes his birth family that we're close to, and they play a role in this as well, of course. It may be shocking to you, but I can't give Tyler everything he needs because I'm not a black man. So he has to have people who he can identify with, who can provide that support that we can't provide. He has to have that tribe. All right, so his wellness plan. Sometimes Tyler has a social worker. He doesn't have one right now, but the role of the social worker...
Is my dad?
No, your dad's not a social worker. He does the job of a social worker.
Okay, well, yeah, I give him some credit.
But when he sees a social worker, he's typically, he vents. That's what he likes to do. He sits and he vents for an hour. That's your job, is to listen to me vent. and then he feels better just having someone listen to him. And then the stay-at-home parent. I talked about this. Do you want to talk about why that's so important that you have that support?
So like I feel safe when I'm around my parents, and they are very, very big pillars for me. And being around them makes me feel a sign of like gratitude, but also like loving and caring and supporting, that I will always have them in my corner, and I will know they will never ever see me as less than or bad or anything like that, because I know she knows me and I know my family, and having that is a very good, important thing for me, because there's not a lot of people with good families out here that are doing the things that my mom and dad are doing right now. So.
But it's a sacrifice in one way, but it's a sacrifice that we all love, and Tyler needs a lot on a daily basis, even just the supports, and Jeff does all of his management of his program he's in. So he'll have a lot to add at our tables. That's why I told him he had to come. Socialization, we always say I look like an extrovert, but I'm a closeted introvert. I actually get all my energy by being by myself. Tyler's the only extrovert in our family. Like, he loves people and wants to be around people all the time. So it's very important that he has that socialization.
So being around people gives me that sort of support system, and like having barriers like around, like people that are gonna have your back, or probably you can express mutual things with. That's something you can kind of like a therapist you can do that with, but a therapist can only do that with you for a certain amount of time, and it costs money and stuff like that. So with your friends, you can kind of go back with each other. You can kind of talk to each other. You can kind of explain stuff. But you do that with the people you kind of connect with the best. And I have a hard time with boundaries sometimes. That's part of my mental illness. Autism, yeah. So I try to reserve myself as best as I can, but I have a hard time doing that sometimes. So.
We have to speed up a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so work provides that stability. Tyler, as you heard, he has the asthma, he has the allergies. At the beginning of COVID, I felt like it was too much of a risk for him to keep working at a grocery store. That was terrible. The first 5 months of COVID were not good.
It was bad.
Yeah. Tyler had a really hard time adjusting to all the changes in society. I understand everyone did, but I do think sometimes for our people that have challenges with change, that can be a real trigger. And I'd say it was for Tyler, but he went out and got himself a job and is working again.
Yeah, and I like to add that I'm starting driving as well. That a lot of people did not say, "Oh, you driving now?" But yeah, I wanted to take a step further and try to expand and try to go out of my comfort zone, because with driving you have to think with your feet, and also you have to think with your body as well. So sometimes with that's a good training mechanism for me. So.
Let's clarify that you're in driving lessons.
Yes.
So there is someone with
you still take me to on your car though. So.
I do. I take him once a week, and we practice in a parking lot. And we practiced last night in a parking lot with cars. So
and with my dad for the first time.
Yeah, and he did great.
And he didn't freak out either. So.
But it will take a while. It will, because he's going to have to build all those neurons. And driving, it's a lot. If you break down what you're doing, that's a lot. So he's doing it, and I believe he will do it. I just believe it'll take some time.
Yeah.
Medication is absolutely essential. Without it, Tyler has no quality of life. At his last hospitalization in February, he was put on an injection, and we are absolutely thrilled. He prefers all his medications be injections and wish that he had that option for all of them. But this really helps to make sure that he's part of the autism is the rule is you take your medicine, so he takes his medicine. But if he's manic, then he forgets and he misses doses, and that makes him more manic.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So that's why it's important. So the injection has been so great, and I hope they find that out for the other medications he's on. I hope they can do that. Food and diet is huge. Tyler's food, I would say, takes up, 2 or 3 hours a day for you every day.
Me and my birth mom are the same way.
Yes, very
What
picky.
is that?
He only wants what he wants. You have to, it's bad. And he cannot eat sugar. If he eats sugar, he becomes violent. That's been since he was a little kid, so we're really good at it. I can make some pretty phenomenal sugar-free desserts and other things for
And
him.
I also refuses to eat dad's cooking, but I love my mom's cooking stuff.
Yes. Sleep, rest, exercise. So luckily I exercise every day. So Tyler grew up with that, and he exercises every day.
Oh, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I used to tread my feet on the ground, and mom rehabbed me completely to stop doing that, and she took me through a whole therapy session with just her and me, and she would do gym classes with the homeschoolers and do stuff like that to keep me back on.
Before my life working in social work, I was a personal trainer for years. So I did a lot of work with Tyler to get his left side and right side of his brain to work together. We improved his numbers quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Music and YouTube. He is so talented at making videos. I am really special when it comes to social media. I am not allowed to, I don't like it, I don't touch it. So I have no idea how he does this, but he's making videos all the time.
And I get thousands of views.
So yeah, he loves it. Activism, we've always been very involved in racial justice, LGBTQ rights, and this is also part of our activism. We've been training social workers for 8 years. Doing this, we started with medical students now as well, and then now with you all. Like, we want change, right? We all want change in this room. Living on his own. This is important. So Tyler is in OPWDD, self-direction. And through that, he has his own apartment and has for 3 years, but I can see it from my bedroom window. So he lives 2 blocks away, and he's at our house multiple times a day. But it's really important for all of us.
To live close near each other.
Yeah, to live near, but also separate.
Yeah, it's better for the whole family.
And then we already talked about the transportation. We have 6 minutes to get through goals. This is the recommendations. This is the first time Sharon said, make recommendations. Make whatever, and I was like, what? No one's ever asked us what we think should happen. So I took it and ran. I kept emailing Sharon and Cheryl, Pat, oh, hey, we just came up with some more. Here's what's going on. I talked to Jeff for a long time because he's been his caregiver since 2014. I also work with social workers all the time, so I know some of that end of it as well. But I want to talk to you about our recommendations. So crisis response, again, when I'm talking about crisis, it's life or death. There's an immediate crisis. The response should always, always, always be non-lethal. Why bring a gun to a crisis response? Because we all know about implicit bias. When you see a large black man and he's in crisis, he's perceived as being dangerous. I should not have a pit in my stomach to call to get help for him when he's in crisis. But it is literally the most stressful thing you can imagine, is to call to get him. It's absolutely horrific to have to call. It should be non-lethal. There are models for this. Cahoots in Oregon's been going on for 20 years. They bring out a team. It's a medical professional, like a nurse or an EMT driver, and a mental health professional. Their 911 calls go to Cahoots, and it's a very, very small percentage of the time that they have to call in law enforcement. But think about that. Even if they did have to call law enforcement, they're already on the scene, which provides this level of protection. We absolutely have to address this. It is crucial. It is his life. It is people's lives. Okay, so we've got to have some training for physicians and staff in the ER. I don't know if it's racism or if it's the IDD or the mental health. I don't know what they're responding to, but they don't respond well. I can't tell you how many times they're like, oh, you need to toughen up, you need to stop, like you're throwing a temper tantrum. They've been physically aggressive with him.
They've been threatening.
They threaten him. Like, we got to get some training of when people are in crisis and anxiety is really high, this is what it looks like. And if you come in really de-escalated, you can de-escalate a situation. Like,
you don't want to light more fire, gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, like we've got to get training around this. Okay, I don't know why, I have to think it's money. Why do we rush hospital discharges? So the 14 hospitalizations we had in a 2-year period, several of those were back to back. So he goes in for a week, he's totally fine, he comes home, he's completely not stable. And then think about the damage that does when he's home. So he just comes from the hospital, you release him not stable, then he goes to attack his sister again. You're asking a lot out of an 11-year-old kid to be like, and even I can remember his sister saying he's faking. I had to, like the work we had to do, they were in therapy for a year. I actually gave her the scale to determine autism. I gave it to her because she's really smart. I'm like, can you tie your shoes? Yes. Can your brother? No. Can you cross the street? Yes. Can your brother? No. Like, that's how I had to get her to be like, he's not faking. Like, because that's hard to put that on a family. Keep them until they're stable. It will save money. It will save money. Post-crisis care. What post-crisis care? So I don't know, like I talked to Sherry about this, I'm like, I don't know what they're calling post-crisis care. The only thing I can think of is the discharge when you leave the hospital. That's not post-crisis care. His team that he works with, I worked with veterans, as you heard, they do an AAR, an after action report, after everything. Why are we not doing after action reports with the team that he works with? That's a problem. Like, we have to talk about what happened, we have to process this, we have to talk about next time here's how we could prevent this, and so on. Okay, I don't know what the term for this is, so I'm calling it not quite crisis. So not quite crisis is when it's not life or death, but he's not stable. So we had a 4-month period where he was not stable last year. Every person on his team knew he wasn't stable. And again, this is life-threatening for him. If he's not stable, it's life-threatening. By the time he got to the hospital, he had lost 20 pounds. He had not allowed anyone in his apartment. He had not one light bulb that worked. So he'd been living in a dark apartment, and my husband took out 28 30-gallon bags of trash out of a 600 in a 600 square foot apartment. That's how he'd been living for 4 months. And everyone knew it, and there was nothing we could do. Talk about not sleeping for 4 months. He goes to the wrong place when he's not in full crisis, but he's also not stable. And they're like, I would call, you have to wait till he escalates it. If he escalates it, it's his life. The escalation ended with 24 cops at our house in riot gear, and it took a hostage negotiator 2 hours to get him out of the house.
Safely.
Yeah, this is why. Why? And then a lot of processing and everything. So lack of services, crisis prevention. We need a safe wellness site for OPWDD and OMH. He was an OMH until he turned into adult, then he went to OPWDD. This has to be part of the treatment plan. If you become not stable, here's where you go. Here's a safe place for you to go where you can be around peers, you can be in a place that your life's not in danger.
Like a group.
Yeah, something. But it has to be part of the plan. Red tape from regulations. I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you about this. So the care team structure, I want to say the people on his team are phenomenal.